Hooray, we are here, and I am delighted to be here for day 3 of Reimagining Thanksgiving, where we are honoring ourselves and others. We're going to talk today about some of those bits and pieces that we shuffled around last week. We'll be talking about the Wampanoag people, the mythologies and stories that we've shared over time, how that's kind of the water we swim around in, and how to move forward and be the light in our families and our communities as we celebrate giving thanks, as we celebrate the abundance of the harvest and all the good stuff, and to not subtract the truth. Ironically, what some First Nations people talk about having truth giving as well as Thanksgiving. So today we're giving thanks, we're reimagining Thanksgiving, we're stepping into what was and what will be. So I am grateful for your presence here as always in my life. So, and in my world here, live streaming on JJS Writing Camp, and we're on YouTube today and in Let Our Words Flow Creative Community. We're kicking off our Monday strong, especially during this week where it's a short work week here in the US. So some of us, in fact, might already be off. I know a lot of schools are closed this week and having the whole week free. And to me, that's like, yay, we have the whole week free. So we have time to dig deep and really be present with what is going on in our lives and in our world. Am I on the right page? I get confused sometimes as to what page I'm sharing. So it's interesting because on my screen, we're like at a totally different spot than that. So here we are reimagining Thanksgiving. And over here, let me go back from that. And hopefully we're on the same page. So I'm going to share the whole screen and see what happens when I move it, if anything. This is where we are. Okay, so this is the website, the Reimagine Thanksgiving website. And I wanted to remind you that there's a lot of good stuff in here. There's a lot of fantastic content for you to think about. And I am still in the process of uploading things. You can get your journaling pages. They've been updated since last week. There's some history of Thanksgiving from history.com, an article from the Native Partnership website. And there's opportunities. If you'd like to have coaching from me, if you this hits something that you'd like to work out, and there's also ways to contact me. So that's what I'm sharing. I'm glad that I popped over to see what the heck I'm doing, which is always a good place to start. And so, and I hope that was moving. So now I'm going to share differently, and we're going to look at, by the way, if you come in, I'd love to see a comment from you so I'll know who's here. Even if it's good to say your name on there, because I may or may not be able to see what you're up to. So here we go. I'm going to share a different screen now. So, this whole thing is interesting because it's all been about learning. It's all been about learning here this week, which is so fun to do things live and in the moment instead of worrying about them being super polished. So as we're honoring ourselves and others, I want us to think about the Wampanoag and the First Nations people. Now, the Wampanoag are the people who are actually in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and I'm ashamed to say I don't know what they actually called that, the native people. And we're going to talk briefly about how to take responsibility and move forward, and how origin stories impact us, even if we don't know it or we're not thinking about it in that same way. So let's see. That's the old page. That's the old page. I have 2 different pages open on my screen. So anyway, so there we go. Okay, so looking at the Wampanoag and First Nations people, I've been doing a lot of research and I'm updating the website. I'm so glad that you're here to see us today. When doing the research, I found so many interesting nuances to this, and lots of suggestions from the First Nations people about how to continue to experience Thanksgiving. One of our participants, I think it was Gina Diane. Gina Diane asked about um, how how is this like the Charlie Brown special? There's apparently a new Charlie Brown special, which I wasn't aware of, that showed the first celebration that the Wampanoag people and the English had. Now, there are differing narratives about how that went down. There is the familiar one because the Pilgrims wrote stuff down about their version of it, and then there is a couple different versions of the First Nation story or the Wampanoag story. So there was a celebration, there was a getting together of people. There was not necessarily all the communication that we hear about from the English speaking perspective. And today it's up to us to come to terms with what happened and what we want to do with what happened. So were the English celebrating in a way that frightened the Wampanoag people? The Wampanoag people did sign a document. Did they have clarity what they were signing? It's very difficult for us to all know, but for me, the important thing is for us to step into what we are learning and to honor what happened and to acknowledge that we have different stories and different mythologies, and to recognize and not feel guilty for what our ancestors' actions were, because we cannot go back and change what happened. But what we can do is change the next part of the story. There's a quote that's oftentimes attributed to C.S. Lewis that goes like this: "We can't go back and change the beginning, but we can start where we are and change the ending." So that is part of the hopes of this project for me, because origin stories impact us even if we don't recognize their impact. Because we would not have had this day, we would not be celebrating this holiday, we would not be off of school and off of our jobs and buying turkeys and pumpkins and corn and all of these things if it wasn't for the story of Thanksgiving. The story of Thanksgiving that was created when the Wampanoag people taught the English-speaking people how to harvest, how to survive, how to be in this new land, right? Corn is obviously not something that was going on over in Europe. Corn is a North American thing. And to me, looking at this image with the corn and the pumpkin pie and the squash, I don't know enough to know which of those foods are indigenous to the indigenous people, or if some of those foods were brought over from the old world. I don't know. But it'd be worth researching, and perhaps something we can do in future years as we integrate these new, renewed, reimagined stories into our narrative as we go forward. It's been a rather hectic Monday morning here. So, with all of that in mind, I'd love for you to consider and think about what are some ways to honor the memories that you have and honor the people who lived these stories. What are some things that you might do to put all of this into action? I know Santina said the other day, she talked about, well, we don't think about what happened. We celebrate Thanksgiving itself and gratitude. And yes, that's true. We do focus on gratitude now. We're not talking about the origin. And yet, that is part of the culture that we live in, whether we give voice to it or not. So one of the ways that I am choosing to honor this truth, if we're doing Truthsgiving, is one of the things I'll be doing, and I'm repeating myself, as a part of my grief for this year, I plan to light candles in memory of my family members who have died recently. And in fact, my youngest brother, who died last December 10th, our last interaction ever was on Thanksgiving Day. So I'll have a candle for him. I will have a candle for my father, and I will have other candles for other people I'll be sharing the holiday with. And I will have a large candle, the largest candle, in memory and thanksgiving for the Wampanoag people. Another thing that the First Nations people suggest we do is to honor who was living on the land that we are now inhabiting or occupying. So I will be occupying land that where the Lenni Lenape Nation, the Lenape people lived. So I will honor the Wampanoag people and the Lenape people as a part of that grief session. Grief and honoring, actually. Just so y'all know that for me, grief is as much about honoring and continuing to live with those people, my brother, my father, my daughter, my friend who was murdered. Just in the last couple of years, I've had those three. My daughter died 30 years ago, so the pain isn't there. But every year, there's like that longing, and it's just like when we think, well, our celebration is not about the Wampanoag people. It's like deep within our DNA, that's still really relevant today. So holding that close is important. So that's how I'm doing it. And another thought, let's see, I want to see what my next slide is. We'll move to that and then we'll go further. Okay, so this is a quote that I thought was really good for us to think about. And I'll say this quote and then I'm going to go into children and also adults. But keep in mind, a quote from Nathaniel Brandon: the first act of honoring the self is the assertion of consciousness, the choice to think, to be aware, to send the searchlight of consciousness outward toward the world and inward toward our own being. That says a lot right there, and definitely what I am aiming toward with this unique reimagining. I wanted to talk about children. There was a great article that I'll be linking to on the website. And they talk about decorations. And my post to Instagram a couple days ago was kind of ridiculous, like paper towel roll, English pilgrim, and a native person, which that's not in the best practices to honor the Wampanoag people, or even the Pilgrims for that matter, the British. Instead, there are other ways that we can use crafts and decorations for our children and for our families. My favorite was a gratitude tree poster that you could, it's like a large size tree you can put up, on a piece of paper and hang leaves of gratitude. That'd be something you could do from the moment people walk in the door. Hang paper leaves and write what you're grateful for in the leaves and post them up on the tree. And it's like you have an instant photo op. And you could even write on there ways of honoring, remembering Wampanoag, honoring and remembering the Lenape people, being truthful. And you could even have stuff about forgiveness. You could have you could make the day, which of course I will probably do the next time I host Thanksgiving, include rituals of reconciliation within the day itself. Some people might think, Julie, you're going overboard, but people who know me know that my passion is true, and I'm grateful that this is the way that I am. Whew. So when we are conscious in ourselves, and then we use that light, which is the way that I would really love for us to be the searchlight of consciousness, and to consider as we go forward in this week how to be that light. How will you be that light in your community, in your family? How will you be that light of consciousness? Before Thursday, when we in the US sit down and celebrate, I hope that you will think about this. And even if you're being the light, is simply being at the Thanksgiving celebration, holding these lessons in your heart without saying a word. That is a great first step. That is a great first step. So I'll be coming back here tomorrow and Wednesday, and then on Friday we'll do a final wrap up. I'll also be going live on Instagram today at 3. It's an hour earlier. Maybe I'll go live at 5. I mean, we're doing the webinar at 4, and then I'll go live on Instagram at 5 as a recap of the day because it's meant to be our recap. So if you're able to join us for the webinar at 4, that's awesome. If you're not, that's totally cool too. We're going to do the wrap up at 4. Same thing on Tuesday. Same thing on Wednesday. And then on Friday, we'll come back here and also on Instagram with our final end of the Thanksgiving, because we know how everyone around this country, once Thanksgiving is over, many people become mad consumers, wild consumers for Christmas. I'm not one of those, but many are. So thank you so much. Thank you so very much for being here today, for watching this on the replay. This is a lot of fun for me to increase my own consciousness toward the holiday. So thank you so much. And I look forward, as always, to seeing you hopefully this afternoon, this evening, tomorrow morning, so that we can continue to reimagine in a powerful way who we want to be and how we want to celebrate and continue to give thanks by reimagining our Thanksgiving. Take good care.